Look, I am going to be honest with you right now. I have seen a lot of stupid things in my 3 decades working security on Station Corvallis. A lot of stupid, greedy, short-sighted things that made me question whether sapient life was really all that sapient after all. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, compares to the level of cosmic stupidity I witnessed on the night of rotation. Let me set the scene for you, because context matters here. Station Corvallis is not exactly what you would call reputable. We are a trading hub on the outer rim where the Galactic Council's laws are more like gentle suggestions, and morality is whatever you can afford. The lower decks where I work are even worse. Down here we have got gambling dens, substance dispensaries, and yes, fighting arenas. Plural, because apparently one place to watch people beat each other senseless for profit was not enough. The biggest arena, the one everyone whispers about, is called the Pit. Creative name, right? It is owned by a Vexorian named Krutha, who has more credits than brain cells, and that is saying something for a species that prides itself on financial acumen. The Pit is a circular depression in the station's sub-level 3, surrounded by rising tiers of seats that can hold maybe 2,000 spectators. The lighting is terrible, all harsh reds and sickly yellows, the kind that makes everyone look either angry or diseased. The smell is worse. Sweat, blood, cheap liquor, and something else I cannot quite identify but makes my nostril slits burn. Tonight, the place was packed, shoulder to shoulder, beings from 40 different species crammed in like cargo, all of them buzzing with anticipation. You could taste the excitement in the air, thick and metallic. The betting pools were overflowing, credits changing hands faster than oxygen cycles. Digital displays flickered above the arena showing odds, fighter statistics, and live feeds from a dozen angles. The crowd wanted a show. They wanted violence. They wanted to see something exotic, something rare, something they could brag about seeing to their friends back home. And Kruthi, that magnificently greedy idiot, was about to give them exactly what they asked for. The fighters entered through opposite gates, and let me tell you, they were impressive. These were not amateurs. These were professionals, beings who had spent years honing their bodies into weapons, who had won hundreds of matches between them. First came Thorvik, a Crenshaw male standing nearly 3 meters tall. His species evolved on a high-gravity world, which meant his bones were dense as starship hull plating, his muscles like corded steel cables. He had rust-colored skin, 4 arms, each one thick as my torso, and a face that looked like someone had taken a hammer to a rock formation. His record was 63 wins, 2 losses. The crowd roared when he raised all 4 fists, flexing in a display that would have intimidated a war mech. Second was Zella, a Thrain assassin who moved like liquid death. Her species was known for speed, flexibility, and a complete lack of anything resembling mercy. She had scaled, iridescent skin that shifted colors with her mood, currently pulsing an aggressive crimson. Her 6 eyes tracked everything simultaneously, and her tail, which ended in a natural bone blade, had reportedly killed 8 opponents in previous matches. 49 wins, 0 losses. She did not showboat like Thorvik. She just stared at the crowd with those unblinking eyes, and several spectators actually leaned back in their seats. Third, and this is important, was Greshk, a Voltarian champion, twice decorated in their planetary combat leagues, before he went private sector. Voltarians are amphibious, covered in slick, blue-green hide that is resistant to most forms of physical damage. Greshk had retractable claws, a jaw that could bite through bone, and venom sacs that could paralyze something twice his size. 97 wins, 1 loss, and that loss was controversial because his opponent had used an illegal neural disruptor. He was the favorite, the odds heavily in his favor, the being everyone expected to walk out of the pit tonight as champion. The crowd was screaming now, chanting names, waving credit chips, demanding blood. And then she entered. Through the south gate, flanked by 2 of Kruthi's handlers, came the human. Mira Chen. That is what her identification chip said when they scanned her before they ripped it out and tossed it in the recycler. She was small, laughably small compared to the others, maybe 1.6 meters tall, slim build with dark hair pulled back in a simple tail. She wore standard arena clothing, a gray bodysuit that left her arms and legs exposed. Her skin was pale, unmarked except for a few fading bruises on her shoulders. She looked young, maybe 20 standard years, and her face was blank, emotionless, staring at nothing. The crowd saw her, and they laughed. They actually laughed. Someone shouted, "Is that the surprise?" Did Crutha run out of real fighters? More laughter. The betting displays flickered, adjusting up. 10,000 to 1 against the human. Then 20,000. Then the numbers stopped climbing because nobody, absolutely nobody, was betting on her survival, let alone her victory. Mira did not react to the laughter. She just stood there, breathing slowly, her dark eyes focused on the center of the pit, waiting the way any of them expected. Now, here is where I need to explain something, because this part is crucial to understanding just how monumentally, catastrophically stupid this entire situation was. Mira Chen should not have been on Station Corvallis. She should not have been anywhere in this sector of space, actually. Earth, you see, is classified as a Class 12 death world by the Galactic Council. For context, Class 12 is the highest rating. There are only 7 planets in the known galaxy with that designation, and 4 of them have been completely quarantined because nothing that evolved there should ever, under any circumstances, be allowed to leave. Earth is different. Earth has sapient life. Humans. And the Council, in their infinite bureaucratic wisdom, decided that humans could participate in galactic society, but with restrictions. Serious restrictions. There are treaties, regulations, entire departments dedicated to managing human integration. You cannot just grab a human off their planet. You cannot traffic them. You cannot exploit them. And you absolutely positively cannot force them into combat situations for entertainment. Why? Because humans are Deathworlders. Apex predators from a nightmare planet where everything, and I mean everything, is trying to kill everything else. Their world has multiple climate zones that would be lethal to most species. Their gravity is heavy. Their atmosphere is corrosive, rich in oxygen that literally burns things from the inside out over time. They have weather patterns that include frozen water falling from the sky, electrical storms that could power cities, and wind speeds that would strip flesh from bone. And humans. They evolved to survive all of that. They thrived in it. The Council knows this. Every station administrator knows this. Every cargo hauler, every merchant, every 2-bit criminal with half a brain knows this. There are warnings, educational programs, cultural sensitivity training, the works. Do not mess with humans. Do not underestimate them. Do not assume that because they look soft and squishy that they are not the most dangerous thing in the room. But Crutha, our lovely arena owner, apparently skipped those sessions. 3 weeks ago, a cargo ship came through Corvallis. The manifest said they were carrying agricultural supplies, spare parts, nothing interesting. What they actually had in their hold was 6 illegally captured sentients from various restricted worlds, destined for black market sales across the rim. Mira was one of them. She had been taken from a colony vessel, drugged, processed, and stuffed in a cargo container like spare equipment. The traffickers sold her to Crutha for a fraction of what they should have charged, probably because they were idiots too and did not realize what they had. Or maybe they did realize and they wanted her off their hands as quickly as possible before the Council trackers caught up with them. Either way, Crutha saw an opportunity. A real human. A Deathworlder. The crowds would go insane for this. The betting would be astronomical. He could charge triple admission prices. For 3 weeks, Mira had been kept in a holding cell in sub-level 5. She had not spoken. Not once. She ate when they fed her, slept when the lights went out, and stared at the walls the rest of the time. The guards reported that she was docile, compliant, probably traumatized into submission. One of them said she seemed broken, like a machine running on minimal power. They thought she had given up. They thought she was harmless. They thought a lot of things, and every single one of those thoughts was wrong. But I did not know that yet. None of us did. We were about to learn, though. Oh, we were definitely about to. The announcer, a Peluvian with a voice modulator that made him sound like a malfunctioning engine, began the introductions. Thorvik first, naturally, because he was the crowd favorite for opening matches. The Crenshaw beat his chest with all 4 fists, creating a sound like thunder rolling through the arena. The crowd ate it up, screaming his name, throwing tokens into the pit as tribute. Then the announcer introduced the human. And facing Thorvik, from the forbidden Deathworld Earth, we bring you something special, something rare, the fragile, the tiny, the entertaining, Mira Chen. Fragile, tiny, entertaining. I remember thinking those words would age poorly. The match bell rang, a sharp, metallic clang that echoed through the pit. Thorvik did not rush. Why would he? He had all the time in the world. He walked, strutted toward the center of the arena. All 3 meters of him, grinning with that rocky face, showing teeth designed to crack open shelled prey. He was saying something mocking her probably, though I could not hear it over the crowd noise. Mira stood perfectly still. She had not moved since entering the arena. Her eyes, those dark human eyes, were locked on Thorvik now, tracking his approach with an intensity that should have warned him. Should have warned all of us. Thorvik got within 5 meters. 4. 3. He raised one massive fist, probably planning to end this quickly, mercifully even. Just one solid hit to knock her unconscious and give the crowd their laugh before the real fights began. That is when Mira moved. I have watched the security footage 17 times since that night, and I still cannot fully track what happened. One moment, she was standing still. The next, she was inside Thorvik's reach, too close for him to swing properly. Her hand, her small, fragile-looking human hand, struck his throat with surgical precision. Not a punch, a strike. Fingers extended, targeting the soft tissue between his armored collarbones. Thorvik's eyes went wide. He staggered, choking, all 4 hands going to his throat instinctively. Mira did not stop. She moved like something mechanical, like a device built for one purpose only. Her legs swept behind his knee, the one joint where Crenshaw have a structural weakness, and his massive body began to fall. As he fell, she jumped, actually jumped, using his descending shoulder as a platform, and wrapped her legs around his thick neck from behind. Her body twisted mid-air, using momentum, using his own weight against him. I heard something crack. The crowd heard it too. That sick, wet, popping sound that means structural damage. Thorvik hit the ground face first, 300 kilos of muscle and bone slamming into the arena floor with enough force to crack the reinforced plating. Mira rode him down, still locked around his neck, her face absolutely blank, emotionless, like she was performing a routine task, something she had done 1,000 times before. 10 seconds, maybe 12. That is how long the entire thing took. Thorvik did not get up. The crowd went silent. Completely, utterly silent. You could have heard a credit chip drop from the upper tiers. 2,000 beings, all of them processing what they had just witnessed, trying to reconcile the laughable human girl with the unmoving Crenshaw champion bleeding on the arena floor. Then someone screamed. Not in fear, not yet, in excitement, in shock, in that sick thrill that comes from seeing something you were not supposed to see, something violent and wrong and utterly unexpected. The betting displays went insane, numbers flickering. Odds recalculating in real time as people scrambled to change their wagers. Mira stood up slowly, calmly, and walked back to her starting position. There was blood on her hands now, Thorvik's blood, dark and thick. She did not wipe it off. She just stood there, breathing steadily, waiting for whatever came next. I felt something cold settle in my gut, a realization slow and terrible creeping through my mind like ice water through my veins. This was not going to be entertainment. This was going to be an education, and we were all enrolled whether we wanted to be or not. Kruth, because he was apparently committed to this disaster, signaled for the second round. The medical drones hauled Thorvik out of the pit, his breathing shallow, his body limp, 3 cracked vertebrae, a crushed trachea, and severe cranial trauma. The medical report would later say he would survive, but he would never fight again. Zella entered the arena differently than Thorvik had. The Thrain assassin was not laughing. She was not showboating. Her scales had shifted from crimson to a dark, cautious purple, and all 6 eyes were locked on Mira with the kind of focus predators reserve for genuinely dangerous prey. She had watched the first round. She had seen what happened. And unlike Thorvik, Zella was smart enough to be afraid, but not smart enough to refuse the fight. The crowd was different now too. The laughter had died. People were leaning forward in their seats, tense, excited in a new way. This was not a joke anymore. This was real. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of violence they had paid to see, just not packaged the way they expected. The bell rang. Zella moved first, fast, using her species' natural speed to circle Mira at a distance. She was probing, testing, looking for an opening. Her tail blade flickered in the harsh lighting, ready to strike. 30 seconds of circling. 40. The crowd started murmuring, impatient. Then Zella struck, a lightning-fast lunge, her tail whipping forward like a spear toward Mira's center mass. Mira twisted, not quite fast enough. The blade caught her side, tearing through the bodysuit, cutting a line across her ribs. Blood welled up immediately, dark red human blood, and the crowd gasped. Zella pulled back, reassessing, probably expecting Mira to slow down, to clutch the wound, to show some sign of pain. Mira did not even look at the injury. She just shifted her stance slightly, compensating for the damage, and kept her eyes locked on Zella. That is when I realized something that made my blood run cold. Humans do not just tolerate pain, they ignore it. Their bodies are built to keep functioning through damage that would incapacitate most species. Adrenaline, they call it. A chemical their bodies dump into their bloodstream during danger, suppressing pain, enhancing strength, sharpening focus. It is a survival mechanism from a world where stopping to acknowledge an injury meant death. Zella lunged again, faster this time, committing to a killing strike. Mira did not dodge. She stepped into it, taking another cut across her shoulder, but getting inside Zella's guard. Her hand caught the Thrain's wrist, the one controlling the tail, and twisted with brutal efficiency. Zella hissed, trying to pull away, but Mira held on. Human grip strength is absurd. Their hands designed to climb, to grab, to hold on to things while their body weight pulls them down in heavy gravity. Zella's wrist bones began to crack under the pressure. The Thrain brought her other claws up, raking them across Mira's arm, tearing furrows in the flesh. Blood sprayed. Mira's expression did not change. She just adjusted her grip, stepped closer, and drove her knee into Zella's midsection with enough force to crack the Thrain's flexible ribcage. The fight got messy after that. Ugly. Zella was fighting for her life now, all pretense of technique gone, just survival instinct and panic. She bit, clawed, thrashed, landed hits that would have ended most fighters. Mira took every single one, her body accumulating damage, blood soaking through her torn bodysuit, and she did not stop. Because here is what the galaxy does not understand about Deathworlders, what they cannot truly comprehend until they see it firsthand. Humans are endurance hunters. On Earth they used to chase prey animals for days, literally days, running them to exhaustion and then moving in for the kill. They do not have the strongest bite, the sharpest claws, the thickest armor. What they have is stamina, persistence, the ability to keep going long after anything sane would have given up and died. Mira got Zella in a hold, arms wrapped around the Thrain's torso from behind, and she squeezed. Zella's scales provided some protection, but not enough. Not against the relentless, crushing pressure of human musculature designed to function in gravity 1.3 times what most species consider normal. Zella's ribs collapsed with a series of wet cracks. She went limp, unconscious from pain and oxygen deprivation. Mira held on for 5 more seconds, just to be sure, then released her. Zella crumpled to the arena floor, gasping, broken. The crowd was not cheering anymore. Some of them were leaving, pushing toward the exits, suddenly realizing that this was not entertainment. This was a massacre with bureaucratic approval. Mira stood in the center of the pit, bleeding from a dozen wounds, her breathing steady, her eyes clear. Still waiting. Still ready. I wanted to stop it then. I really did. But Kruthev was already signaling for round 3, his eyes gleaming with the kind of manic greed that overrides common sense. The betting pools had exploded, credits flowing like water, and he was not going to stop until someone made him. Someone, or something. Gresh did not wait in the preparation area. He came out immediately, walking through the south gate while medical drones were still extracting Zella from the arena floor. The Voltarian champion looked at the blood, the broken bodies, the small human girl standing in the center of it all, and his expression was unreadable behind his amphibious features. The crowd was fractured now. Half of them were chanting Gresk's name, desperate for their champion to restore order, to prove that this was all just a fluke, that the human had gotten lucky twice. The other half were screaming for Krutha to stop the fights, to end this before someone died, because that was the line apparently. Permanent injury was fine, but actual death would bring the authorities down on the pit like a cargo hauler through a debris field. Kruth ignored them all. He was too far gone, too invested in the spectacle, too blinded by the rivers of credits flowing through the betting systems. I checked my comm unit. Station security had been alerted. They were on their way, but sub-level 3 is a maze, and it would take them at least 15 minutes to navigate down here. 15 minutes. I looked at Mira, bleeding, swaying slightly from blood loss, her bodysuit more red than gray now. I looked at Gresh, fresh, uninjured, 97 wins, a professional killer who had spent 2 decades perfecting his craft. 15 minutes, might as well have been 15 hours. The bell rang. Gresh did not posture, did not waste time. He moved in fast, low to the ground, using his amphibious body structure to present a minimal target. He had watched the previous fights, studied Mira's technique, identified her patterns. This was not arrogance. This was professionalism. Mira shifted her stance, favoring her left side where Zella's tail had cut deepest. Blood was dripping steadily from her wounds, pattering on the arena floor in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She should have been in shock, should have been collapsing from blood loss, should have been barely conscious. She moved like she was fresh. Grax struck first, his claws extending, aiming for her legs, trying to cripple her mobility. Mira jumped, actually jumped, despite her injuries, and Gresk's claws whistled through empty air. She came down on his back, driving her elbow between his shoulder blades with enough force to crack his slick hide. Gresk rolled, fast, his body sliding across the blood-slicked floor, using his natural lubrication to escape her grip. He came up 6 meters away, reassessing. A crack in his hide was already sealing itself, his species' regenerative abilities kicking in. The crowd was silent now. Even the ones who had been chanting had gone quiet, watching with the kind of horrified fascination normally reserved for shuttle crashes or stellar collapses. They went at each other again. Gresk used his venom, managing to scratch Mira's forearm with his retractable claws. The neurotoxin entered her bloodstream enough to paralyze a being twice her size within seconds. Mira's arm trembled. Her fingers spasmed. She switched hands, adjusted her stance, and kept fighting. Impossible. The venom should have dropped her immediately. But human biology is redundant, over-engineered for survival. Multiple organ systems, distributed nerve clusters, a cardiovascular system that can reroute blood flow around damaged areas. The venom was working, just not fast enough, and Mira's body was already flooding the affected area with antibodies fighting back at a cellular level. Gresk realized his mistake then. I saw it in his eyes, all three of them widening simultaneously. He had used his trump card, his guaranteed finisher, and it had not worked. Now he was in a prolonged fight with something that did not stop, did not slow, did not acknowledge damage the way any sane being should. The fight turned savage. Gresk abandoned technique, going for raw power, trying to land a killing blow before Mira's accumulated damage finally brought her down. His jaws opened wide, designed to bite through reinforced bone, and he lunged for her throat. Mira did something I had never seen before and hope never to see again. She let him bite her, actually let those jaws close on her shoulder, those teeth designed to kill sinking deep into her flesh. The crowd screamed. Some of them looked away, but Mira had both hands free now, and Gresk was committed to the bite, locked in, unable to release quickly without tearing his own jaw muscles. She drove her thumbs into his eyes. Not the outer ones, the decorative ones most species have. The central eye, the one Voltarians use for depth perception, the one connected directly to their brainstem. Gresk released her, shrieking, a sound that made my bones ache, thrashing wildly. Mira held on, riding him like a piece of equipment, her thumbs buried in his eye socket, pushing deeper, finding the soft tissue beneath. He tried to throw her off, tried to use his superior strength, his size advantage, his professional training. None of it mattered. Mira had locked her legs around his torso, her body molded to his, and she pressed harder, driving through ocular fluid, through membrane, through everything until she felt resistance give way. Gresk went rigid. Then he collapsed, his body seizing, his nervous system overloaded with pain signals it had no framework to process. The crowd was screaming now, but not in excitement, in horror, in primal fear. People were trampling each other, trying to reach the exits. Species barriers forgotten. Everyone united in their desperate need to be anywhere else. Mira stood up slowly, blood pouring from the bite wound on her shoulder, from the cuts on her arms and torso, from a dozen other injuries. Her paralyzed arm hung limp at her side. Her breathing was labored now, finally showing signs of the damage she had taken. But she was standing. The three professional fighters, the champions, the killers who had won hundreds of matches between them, were not. She looked up at Kruth's viewing box, and even from my position I could see her expression. Still blank, still emotionless. But her eyes, those dark human eyes, held a question. More? Learn. Kruthi did not answer Mira's unspoken question. He could not. The Vixorian had gone completely still in his viewing box, his skin pale, his breathing rapid. I think reality finally caught up with him, crashing through the greed-induced fog that had been clouding his judgment for weeks. He had just forced a human, a restricted Deathworlder, into combat, broadcasted it to 2,000 witnesses, and created a political incident that would have repercussions across multiple sectors. The arena had descended into chaos. The exits were clogged with panicking spectators, beings shoving and climbing over each other, desperate to leave before the authorities arrived, before their faces were catalogued by the security system, before they became accessories to what was very clearly a multitude of galactic crimes. The betting displays flickered and died as the system administrators killed the feeds, trying to erase evidence that would absolutely not be erased because nothing ever really gets deleted in a digital age. Mira stood alone in the pit, swaying now, her adrenaline finally beginning to fade, her body's damage control systems reaching their limits. Blood pooled around her feet, too much blood, and I realized she was going to collapse soon. Minutes. Maybe. Her eyes were starting to unfocus, her breathing becoming shallow. That is when station security finally arrived. They came in heavy, 12 officers in full riot gear, weapons drawn, expecting to find an out-of-control combat situation. What they found instead was a tiny human girl barely standing, surrounded by the broken bodies of 3 of the sector's most famous fighters. The lead officer, a Corinthian named Alex, who I had worked with for years, stopped dead in his tracks. His weapon lowered slowly as his brain processed the scene. What in the name of the Corps happened here? His voice was barely a whisper, amplified by his helmet speakers into something hollow and stunned. I stepped forward, my security credentials flashing on my uniform display. Illegal Deathworlder trafficking, forced combat, 3 counts of sapient endangerment, multiple treaty violations. Take your pick, Alex. We have got the entire criminal buffet here. Medical teams rushed past us, heading for the fighters first. Then, finally, one of them approached Mira. She did not resist when they guided her down to a sitting position, did not fight when they began scanning her injuries, cataloging the damage. She just stared ahead, that same blank expression like none of this was really happening to her. The medic, a Peluvian with actual training unlike our arena quacks, looked at his scanner and made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. 17 lacerations, 4 deep enough to require regenerative treatment, severe muscle trauma to the right shoulder, neurotoxin contamination in her left arm, 3 cracked ribs, blood loss approaching critical levels, and she is still conscious. She is sitting here, conscious. After all of this, Deathworlder, I said simply, like that explained everything. Because it did. Within an hour, the station commander arrived. Within 2 hours, Galactic Council representatives were demanding real-time updates. Within 3 hours, the entire incident had been classified under about 40 different legal frameworks, and lawyers were swarming the station like scavengers on a carcass. The political nightmare was even worse than I had imagined. Earth's diplomatic corps sent a delegation immediately, their ship arriving in system faster than should have been physically possible, which meant they had been close by, which meant they had probably been tracking Mira since her disappearance. The human ambassador, a stern woman named Victoria Okoro, stood in the station commander's office and delivered what I can only describe as the most professionally worded threat I have ever heard. She did not raise her voice once. She did not need to. Every word was a scalpel, cutting through excuses, laying bare exactly how many treaties had been violated, how many laws had been shattered, and what the consequences would be. Kruthi was arrested within 6 hours. His assets were frozen, his business licenses revoked, his entire operation dismantled by investigators who found evidence of dozens of other illegal activities once they started looking. He would spend the next 20 years in a council detention facility, and that was the merciful option. The alternative was being extradited to Earth to face human justice, and after what I had witnessed, I would not wish that on anyone. The traffickers who had sold Mira to Kruthi were already dead. Earth's intelligence services had found them 2 days prior, and the official report said they resisted arrest. I did not ask for details. I did not want to know. The 3 fighters survived. Barely. Thorvik would never walk properly again. Sela lost function in her left lung cluster. Greshk was blind in his primary eye and suffered permanent neurological damage. They were victims too in their way, forced into a situation they could not have understood, but the galaxy did not see it that way. They saw 3 professional killers brought down by a single human girl, and the message was clear. Do not touch Earth's children. Do not assume you understand what they are capable of. Do not mistake their small size for weakness, their soft appearance for fragility, their silence for submission. The Deathworld classifications exist for a reason, And Station Corvallis had just learned that lesson in the most brutal, public, expensive way possible. The Galactic Council did not waste time. Within a week they passed Emergency Resolution 7074-3, which expanded enforcement protocols for Deathworlder protection across all member systems. Funding for anti-trafficking task forces tripled overnight. Penalties for Deathworlder exploitation increased to include mandatory life sentences, no exceptions, no parole. Council stations that had previously treated the regulations as suggestions suddenly found themselves subject to surprise inspections, their security footage audited, their financial records examined with excruciating detail. 14 trafficking rings were dismantled in the first month alone. 63 captive Deathworlders were recovered and returned to their homeworlds, including 2 other humans who had been taken from the same colony vessel as Mira. The black market for exotic fighters collapsed completely, because nobody, absolutely nobody, wanted to risk ending up like Ruth, or worse, like the traffickers who had made the mistake of angering Earth. Mira spent 3 weeks in the station's medical facility before the human delegation transported her to their ship. I saw her once during that time escorted by 4 armed guards, not to keep her in, but to keep curious onlookers out. She was wearing clean clothes, her injuries healing with the help of advanced regenerative treatments. Her arm had regained function, the neurotoxin purged from her system. She looked healthier, younger somehow, without the blood in the blank expression. Ambassador Okoro was with her, and I overheard part of their conversation as they passed my station. "You did what you had to do," the ambassador said quietly, her hand on Mira's shoulder. "Nobody blames you. You survived. That is what matters." Mira nodded slowly, but she did not speak. I wondered if she would ever talk about what happened, or if she would carry it silently, the way humans seem to carry so many of their traumas buried deep where nobody else can see. They left Station Corvallis 6 hours later, and I have not seen or heard from Mira Chen since. I hope she is okay. I hope she found peace, or therapy, or whatever humans need to process something like that. But I do not know. I will probably never know. What I do know is that the pit never reopened. The entire Sub-Level 3 entertainment district was shut down permanently. The spaces converted to storage facilities and maintenance bays. Nobody wanted to fight there anymore. Nobody wanted to watch. Nobody wanted to be reminded of the night a human girl taught 2,000 people why Deathworlders are called Deathworlders. The footage, despite every attempt to suppress it, leaked within days. It spread across the galactic net, like a virus, compressed, edited, analyzed frame by frame. Educational institutions used it as a case study in biological diversity and threat assessment. Military academies showed it to cadets as an example of what happens when you underestimate an opponent. It became legend, mythology, the kind of story people tell to make a point. Do not mess with humans. Just do not. I still work security on Station Corvallis. I still see stupid things every single day. Beings making poor choices, greed overriding common sense, the usual parade of sapient foolishness. But nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, has tried to restart the fighting arenas. Nobody has suggested bringing in exotic fighters. Nobody even jokes about it anymore. 3 months after the incident, a human freighter docked at the station for routine resupply. The crew came through my checkpoint. 5 humans, all of them polite, professional, completely unremarkable. They were small compared to most species, soft-looking, with their strange hair and their round eyes and their fragile skin. They smiled when I checked their credentials, thanked me when I cleared them through, and every single being in that corridor gave them a wide berth, respectful nods, careful distance. Not because they were afraid, exactly, but because they remembered, because the whole galaxy remembered. Humans are Deathworlders. They come from a planet that tried to kill them for millions of years and failed. They evolved to be persistence hunters, endurance specialists, adaptable survivors who can eat almost anything, live almost anywhere, and keep going long after anything sensible would have quit. They have adrenaline and redundant organs and pain tolerance that borders on supernatural. They form pack bonds and hold grudges and will chase you across the galaxy if you hurt one of their own. And most importantly, most critically, they remember. So here is my advice, free of charge, from someone who watched 3 professional fighters learn this lesson the hard way. If you see a human, be polite, be respectful, treat them the way you would want to be treated, because that social species empathy thing they have goes both ways. They can be your greatest allies or your worst nightmare, and the choice is entirely up to you. As for me, I have seen enough. I have learned my lesson. I know exactly where humans sit on the galactic danger scale, and I will never ever forget it. Neither will Station Corvallis. Neither will anyone who was there that night. And honestly, that is probably exactly how Earth wanted it. Message received. Humanity. Message received.